Bolt Nation, smash that like button, subscribe right now, and turn on notifications because something is happening in Los Angeles, and it is absolutely changing the way we should be reading this offseason. The Chargers are sending signals, loud ones. They are valuing experience. They are being tied to aggressive trade ideas. They still have a very real issue on the offensive line. And when you start seeing multiple moves and multiple storylines all pointing in the same direction, you better believe this fan base needs to lock in. Today we are connecting every single one of those dots because this might not be random noise. This might be a bigger picture forming right in front of us. So let me ask you right out of the gate, are you more fired up right now, or are you still skeptical about what this team is building? Let's start with the move that some people outside this fan base are going to shrug off. Big mistake. Tony Jefferson is officially back with the Bolts. And if you really follow this team, you know this is not some meaningless depth signing that gets buried on the timeline and forgotten by tomorrow. The Chargers brought Jefferson back on a one-year, $2 million deal after a season where he flat out delivered. And that matters a lot. Because this is not just about bringing back a familiar face, this is about bringing back a veteran who actually produced at a high level. In 13 games last season, Jefferson came away with 4 interceptions and 7 pass breakups. 4 picks. That is not a cameo. That is not a farewell tour. That is impact. That is production. That is a guy stepping back into the fire and making plays. And think about how wild that really is. We are talking about a player who had come out of retirement before the 2024 season. A guy many people probably assumed was done. And then what happens? He comes back and puts together one of the most productive stretches of his entire career. That is the kind of story casual fans ignore and real football people respect. Because this tells you something about what the Chargers value. They are not just chasing splash. They are looking for guys who know how to play, know how to communicate, know how to hold up when the game gets fast and ugly and chaotic. You need those guys. Every serious defense does. And when you put Tony Jefferson back into that safety room, now it gets even more interesting. You have Derwin James, you have Elijah Molden, you have young talent in RJ Mickens, and now you add another layer of experience, instincts, and ball production. Suddenly, this does not feel like a tiny little transaction anymore. It feels like a defense making sure it has answers. It feels like a coaching staff saying, we trust this guy, we know what he brings, and we know this unit can get even smarter and nastier with him in the mix. So yeah, maybe it is not the flashiest move of the offseason, but you know what? Sometimes the moves that matter most are the ones that tighten the screws and raise the floor before anybody else realizes what is happening. So sound off in the comments right now. Scale of 1 to 10, how hyped are you about Tony Jefferson coming back? And do you think he can still be a difference maker for this Chargers secondary? Now let's turn the temperature up because this next one lives in that beautiful, dangerous NFL zone where rumor meets logic and suddenly the whole fan base starts imagining what could happen. There is no official trade in place. Let's make that crystal clear. Nothing is done. Nothing has been announced. But a projected trade idea out there has the Chargers landing Kayvon Thibodeau from the Giants in exchange for Denzel Perryman and a 2026 fourth-round pick. And whether it happens or not, you cannot tell me that is not the kind of scenario that gets your mind racing. Why? Because the fit makes sense. The Chargers have taken hits at edge this offseason, that is real. And when a team with playoff expectations starts losing depth at one of the most important positions in football, you better believe people are going to start connecting dots. On the Giants side, they have numbers, they have bodies, they have talent in that room. So if they were ever going to move someone, this is the type of name that would get attention. And from the Chargers' point of view, Thibodeau is exactly the kind of player who could tempt a front office that believes environment matters, coaching matters, and unlocked talent matters. Because let's be honest, this is where it gets fascinating. If the Chargers see him as more than just a rotational pass rusher, if they see him as a buy low player with real upside, then this is not just about adding depth behind Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipolo too. This is about future-proofing the position. Mack is on a one-year deal. The clock is ticking. You have to think ahead. You have to ask the hard question now instead of when it is too late. Who is the next answer off the edge? Who is the next guy who can step into that role if everything breaks right? And if the Chargers believe Kayvon Thibodeau still has that kind of ceiling, then a move like this starts looking a whole lot more serious. Now, does that mean it is likely? Not necessarily. The Giants could absolutely hold on to him and wait to see if his value rises later in the season. That is very possible. But the reason this rumor has juice is because it is not nonsense. It is not random. It is built on actual football logic. Need meets opportunity. Talent meets uncertainty. That is how trade smoke starts in this league. So if you are enjoying this kind of Chargers breakdown, hit subscribe right now and send this to another Chargers fan. Because when the market starts shaking, Bolt Nation needs to be ahead of the conversation, not chasing it. And now I want to hear from you. Would you make that deal for Kayvon Thibodeau? Or is giving up Denzel Perryman and a fourth rounder too much for a gamble like that? But hang on, because the story does not stop on defense. If this team is serious about maximizing Justin Herbert, then we have got to talk about the trenches. And this next idea is one of those under-the-radar possibilities that could suddenly become very real if the draft does not fall the right way. Robert Hunt is not currently tied to the Chargers in any confirmed negotiation, so let's not get reckless here. This is not a report, this is a fit. This is a football conversation. But if Los Angeles comes out of the draft still needing help at guard, Robert Hunt is a name that makes a ton of sense. He signed a massive deal with Carolina before the 2024 season. 5 years, $100 million, and things have not exactly exploded the way people expected. Injuries got in the way in 2025, he missed most of the year, came back in time for the Panthers' playoff game, but the overall picture still feels unsettled. And that is exactly when opportunity starts knocking for smart teams. Because the question is not just whether Robert Hunt is talented, the question is whether the Chargers could land a proven, physical interior lineman at the right price and stabilize a position that still feels shaky. If the answer is yes, then this conversation gets real in a hurry. And this is the bigger issue, the one that should keep every Chargers fan locked in. Interior offensive line play is not a side note. It is not optional. It is not a luxury. It is survival. It is structure. It is the difference between a clean pocket and total chaos. You can have star power at tackle, but if pressure is crashing through the middle, your quarterback is living in a war zone. If the Chargers walk away from the draft without a true answer at guard, then they have to be ready to pivot fast. And if Robert Hunt becomes available in a manageable deal, that is exactly the kind of swing this front office should at least consider. So tell me this, if the draft does not solve guard, would you make a move for Robert Hunt, or would you rather the Chargers chase a different answer? And that brings us to the most urgent part of this entire conversation, the thing that might matter more than every rumor and every comeback story put together. The Chargers still have a guard problem. That is not drama. That is not fan paranoia. That is a real roster issue. The team is not bringing back either starting guard from last season. Mekhi Becton is gone, Johnson is gone to Cleveland, and now the interior of this line is sitting there with questions that have not been fully answered yet. Yes, Cole Strange gives them an option. Yes, Trevor Penning can potentially slide inside, but let's be real here. Options are not the same as solutions. Competition is not the same as confidence. This is where the entire offseason starts to come into focus. Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt coming back healthy at tackle is huge. That helps. That stabilizes the edges. But in the modern NFL, pressure up the middle is a nightmare. And if you are trying to protect a franchise quarterback in his prime, you cannot mess around here. You just cannot. Justin Herbert should be the center of every serious decision this team makes. If the middle of the line caves in, the whole operation starts wobbling. The run game gets muddy, the timing gets disrupted, third downs get uglier, explosive plays vanish, and suddenly you are wasting drives and wasting chances in games you should be controlling. That is why, out of everything we talked about today, this may be the biggest deal of all. Bringing back Tony Jefferson strengthens the defense. Exploring a potential edge move like Kayvon Thibodeau could raise the ceiling. Keeping an eye on a possible interior target like Robert Hunt makes sense, but the guard situation? That one is immediate. That one is foundational. That one touches everything. The Chargers have to add real talent and real competition there, whether it comes through the draft, through the market, or through a move nobody sees coming yet. So here's the big takeaway, and I need Bolt Nation to hear this. The Chargers are attacking this offseason from multiple angles. They are reinforcing experience. They are staying connected to upside. They are clearly aware that protecting Justin Herbert has to remain priority number one. Not every storyline here is a confirmed blockbuster, but the signals are real. And when multiple signals all start flashing in the same direction, that is when you know something is building. Maybe the roster is not finished. Maybe the real shape of this team is still forming. Maybe Los Angeles is setting the table for a move that changes everything. So hit like, subscribe, and get in the comments right now. Which of these moves matters most to you? Which one could change the Chargers season? And most importantly, are the Bolts really building something dangerous in Los Angeles, or are we still waiting for the true game changer to arrive?